Hello and welcome to Angie B Crafts. So today I am going to be having a look at white things. Yes, I know these aren't white, nor are these, but these are, and this is. And this is what I'm actually doing this about. I've just discovered this and I just wanted to share it because it's really clever. So I've got here my options for putting white on my pictures at the minute and on any of my mixed media or anything. And it's Posca pens, which I'm sure you've all heard of. Posca pens are an acrylic paint in pen form. You can get them with a range of nibs. So that one's a fat bullet nib and this one's a skinnier bullet nib. You can take the nibs out and flip them round, so if you get slightly worn at one end, you prime them, you give them a shake, make sure they mix up, you prime them by pressing the nib in, and then they work on things. And then you have jelly roll pens. So this is the Sakura. Now there are other white pens out there. This is not me saying that these are all that there is. This is just what I've used to date. And jelly roll pens, I've probably got half a dozen of these floating around the room, and they're just a very fine pen. I think they're about 1 mil, no, 0.8 mil. I know that because of the 0.8 there. And again, these do a job, but what you find is the colour from beneath absorbs up. And the theory is that Dr. P.H. Martin's bleed proof white doesn't do that. So what I thought I would do today is have a little bit of a play, lay some colour down and use different mediums and then see how it works. So we'll start off, we'll pop down, I'm just using a sheet of Pink Frog card, 300 GSM super smooth, which is something that I use quite frequently, and this is literally just pop it down and see what happens. Oh, can I just say, Dina Wakley brushes, love them, love them. So I'm putting this down because it's going to take the longest. I'm not doing this to be artistic, this is purely for testing. So we've got a darker colour in the purple and then a slightly lighter colour in the turquoise. So let's get some of these. We'll go with the darker colour of the charcoal grey and then a paler, a colour that transfers. Yellows transfer quite well, don't they? Pop the rest of them out of the way. If you hear things falling, it's because there's a mountain next to me that's getting bigger by the day and at some point it's going to have to collapse. So I'm just going to apply these, just using it. These are Inktense watercolour pencils, so they're just a watercolour in pencil form. You can apply them as I'm doing at the minute, just using them literally as a watercolour with a wet brush, or you can draw with them, so you can see the intensity is increasing as the brush dries out. Right, let's get a few layers of this on because we want it relatively dark. So if I do a little bit under here as well, so what you can do is put the colour down and then add water and draw it out. This isn't the best card for doing this, but as I say, this is just as a sample. You can still see some of the lines. To be honest, I tend to use it more in that way, using it as a brush. As a brush? No, using it as a palette, that's the word. I know what I mean. So we'll put this yellowy colour down as well. And then I'm also going to put down some distress ink and some distress crayons. So I'm not going to try absolutely everything because that'll take forever, but I'm just going to get some layers down. Let's put a little bit down here. So you tend to get a more intense colour if you apply it to the paper direct, but you do get the lines to an extent. This isn't a lesson in how to use Inktense, so please don't judge me. Right, distress inks, I've got spiced marmalade. I am literally just going to blob some colour down. Oops. And then we have distress crayons. Let's see what colours we have in these. We'll go with this. Oh, I love this colour. The aged mahogany. Mahogany? I don't know why I paused there. Aged mahogany. And I'm putting it just neat. I'm not going to add any water to it to try and disperse it, because I'm wanting to see what happens. Might not have done enough of those ones, but we'll see. We shall see. So I'm going to give everything a quick blast just to make sure it's dry, because you tend, in theory, you're going to actually apply your white over stuff that's already dried. It's used as a method of highlighting, so you want it to have already been dried. So let's give these a blast, make sure they're dry. Right, so I'm going to start off with my jelly roll, which is by Sakura. I tend to use the back of my hand with this. It picks up some colours, and you can find that it tends to get a different colour on the nib, so just check it on the back of your hand. So I'm just going to do a bit of a wiggle on each of them. Now I'm going to clean it off. Now, it's not picked up anything obvious there. Let's do a bit of a wiggle on here. So we're not assessing whether or not it's flowing. That's not what this is about. This is about, and it isn't flowing, to be honest. So this is still a little bit wet. This hasn't dried off fully. Oh, there's a bit that's dried. Oh, you can see straight away the colour on that one is picking up. And then let's try it on here. Well, yeah. That's just kind of scratching it. It's not really doing anything on top of that. So that's actually left the acrylic below. It's not absorbed the colour there. There's a very slight absorption of some of the colour here, but not a great deal. Let's try, I'm just going to try the little pen. So you need to give it a shake, and then if you want to prime it, you just press it down and you'll see the ink starts to come out, and that's when you know it's ready for use. So we're going to do exactly the same with this on each of these. This is my own experimentation because I've not had this very long, so it's just to see. I mean, this makes me laugh. I've now got a little bit of the orange on there, so I'm going to do exactly the same. You can see it's getting paler and paler, and then it's gone off the end of the pen. And then let's do some on here. It's immediately picking them up. It's just transferring it across, isn't it? And again, you get it on the end of the pen. So just, if you do find you get it on the end of the pen, just clean the pen off. It might be sensible to actually use, I don't know, like a raggy or something to do it rather than the back of your hand. I use the back of my hand for way too many things. No wonder it gets a bit tender sometimes. So there is a definite colour pickup on these two, which you would expect. They're products that you would expect the colour to pick up on. I'm wondering, just let me add a little bit of water to these and see if it still picks up when it's made more runny. So it doesn't matter what these colours are ending up like. We're just using them more as a paint as opposed to a crayon. That's all I'm doing that for. So I know it's gone muddy, I'm not bothered by that. We'll come back to that in a minute. So I'm now going to show you this. I feel very conscious of this. Nice little imagery. So this is a jar of thick acrylic paint, and when you look at it, it just looks super duper thick. You tip it up, it doesn't move. It just doesn't move. It's brilliant. But if you then get a brush, okay, so I've not wet my brush or anything, I'm just popping it in and I'm just starting to move it. It's kind of like if you see people who walk on custard, it's that kind of concept. So as soon as you start mixing it, you start getting a fluid, but before you mix it, it's not a fluid. It's weird. I don't understand the science behind it, but it immediately becomes more fluid. But you can see the intensity of the white there. Okay. Now, if you want to know more about the different uses for this, then I would suggest you watch Lou Withers on the craft store. They'll be on catch up, I believe. But this, so it says bleed proof for the simple reason that it actually covers the colour below. Oh, getting a blob of it there. So when you do the comparison of this, you get a very different response. Now I don't know if it's going to work on everything. Like I said, this is me experimenting. I haven't done this on everything. It is an acrylic, so because it's an acrylic, it is going to have a reaction to some things. Oh, that's interesting. It's picking up. It is actually picking up the orange. Let's see if that dries off without picking it up. The intensity of the white overall is much greater with this, but it is still, if you put it on top of this when it's wet, it's still picking it up. Interesting. Like I say, this is just me learning as well. Right, I'm going to give that a rinse. And that is because it's still wet. So I'm going to find... Oh, right. This is a piece of paper that has got shaving foam technique, so that'll have been done with inks. Let's see what happens. The inks are acrylic. No, they're not. They're watercolour, Angela. Stop talking rubbish. That covers it pretty well. You're not getting anything showing through there at all. I like it. I like the effect it has. It's interesting that it does react with the distress ink, but as I say, that is wet, so it will. Right, I've got here, I'm just looking at my pile of stuff next to me. This is distress inks, but these are dry, so let's try it on here. These are distress sprays, I should say. They're not the inks, they are the sprays. So let's just do the others. Try my jelly roll. So I'm going to do my jelly roll. I'll go over it a couple of times just to, you know, make sure that we're giving it a fair chance. Give it a fair go. And it's not really picked up any colour, but it does seem to be clogging a little bit. It's okay. I'll try this. Again, I'm going to go over it a couple of times, let's be fair. So we're starting to get a little bit of pilling with that, going over it more than once. Not brilliant. And it is taking on some of the orange. Now, what about this? What happens with this? I just think the intensity, I mean the intensity of the white, just one stroke, is totally different. I'm impressed. I've only had a play with it on a tiny little piece of paper so far, and I'm liking it. Actually, no, that's a fib. I discovered something else. Which I'll show you in a second, that you can mix it with other colours and it has a different effect on that as well. So you can see here, the Posca is kind of a little bit meh when it comes to, that's a technical term, when it comes to actually going over the top. You're not getting an intensity to it. Let's do the bigger one and just make sure it's not, because my Posca's an ancient one. Right, that's working. So let's do, that's the Posca, so let's do the thicker Posca next to it. So again, it's quite insipid, isn't it? So that's a little bit thicker. That's putting on a few layers. You're going to have to sit and really paint over it to get anywhere near the intensity, and even then it's just not the same level of intensity. What about on these? Yeah, it's just with these it's immediately picking up the colour. Let's clean that off. Right, this is pretty dry now, so it doesn't pick up the colour once. Oh yeah, it does. I'm lying. I was going to say it doesn't pick up the colour once it's been watercoloured in. It does. It's not as intense, but it does pick up the colour. Right, I am waffling because I'm excited and I'm learning at the same time. So the advantage of this bleed proof white is that it's a more intense white. So if you're looking for something which is very definitely, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to stop using my Posca and my gel pen, because sometimes I just want a lighter shade, so using them just lifts the colour from underneath and gives you a lighter shade. But what this does is gives you a true white on top of surfaces. So the other thing I was going to show you, I do remember things occasionally. Let me get another piece of card. You will hear everything fall in a minute because it's all piled up. Right, piece of card and some paint. Now I just want to I'm grabbing a stamp and hopefully I've got it. Yes, I've got an ink pad. And I'm just going to try this. I've not tried this yet. I'm not even putting this on a block. It is just to get an image down. Just to get some black underneath. Okay. If you want to know what stamp that is, it's one of the All and Create ones, but it's not really relevant. I'm going to give it a quick dab. I'll just do it with my cloth actually because it's a clean one. You can tell it's still vaguely folded. Yes, this is how they come out clean. Right, so that's just blotted it a little bit. Right, so then if I get just some of the green, I shall use the same brush for both. I'm just going to put a bit on. So this is the Dina Wakley paint, and you can see, and that's not the first generation, that's second and third generation images underneath, but you can still see the image underneath. Okay, so my theory now is I'm going to put this here and mix it with a little bit of the white. I love this white. It gives it, obviously you're adding white, so you're going to change the colour, but that is not what this is about. So I'm putting it next to it so that I can re-dip my brush. There we go. Give it a mix together. We're going to end up with a lighter colour because we're adding white. Now it does react. This is something I've discovered. It kind of makes it go thick and gloopy, but it also gives you a more solid coverage. So I've not done a lot here obviously. Let's add a bit more of this in. See, this, it's a weird, it's kind of, it solidifies it all, so it's not like an ordinary acrylic. I don't know if it's classed as an acrylic actually. Yeah, you just need to add the right consistency. I'm getting it all over everywhere now. Let's just move that down. Get off my brush. There we are. Okay, so you can see it's now just becoming a thick paint. So you need to give it a good mix. But because it's thicker, it covers. So you can actually make your acrylics that don't cover enough cover more. So you can see the bits that have had, this has just had a single layer on top and you can't really see the image underneath. This one, it's still very, very clear. This one isn't, and I just think that's a really good benefit of it, that you can change the consistency of your existing paints. So what does it say about it? Maybe harmful if swallowed. There we go. So it contains zinc sulfate, which is why it's going blobby, because zinc is something that's really, it's quite a thick thing. So it covers dye colours, markers. You meant to stir it well. Oh, that could be where I'm going wrong. Let's give it a stir, see what happens. Should we just stir it up? So I haven't stirred it at all. It's like double cream. Yeah, it goes a lot more runny once you stir it. Eee, look at that. I love it. It's my new best friend, I think. So possibly you won't get as gloopy if you actually stir it first. You know, follow the instructions. Ignore what I say, just follow the instructions. Let's brush that off, not waste it. Now you can water it down as well. So this is it watered down a bit because this brush was really wet and I've kind of washed off what was there. Let's see what happens now. So even that, you're not getting brilliant coverage, but it's watered down. You are getting some coverage, and it covers over. Oh, that's interesting. It's actually showing the ink through until you put a couple of coats on, but it's giving you an idea Aha, I like that. It's giving you an idea that there's something there by the ink is giving you a different surface to put it on. Interesting. But yeah, you can water it down. As I say, if you want to know more about the uses of it, please do go and have a look on the craft store site, because I know Lou Withers was on, it was either last week or the week before, showing it, and she was showing how to stamp with it and everything, and it's really good. And if you want a true white for any of your projects, then I would suggest using this. It really does work. So just let's have a look at those final trails. You can see the white is, even though it's come through here, it's not come through all the way around. These were just dabbed on, these weren't a thick layer. This is your Posca now on the watered down Distress crayon. The Posca is really just providing you with a gentle overlay. I mean, on that one you can see the Posca's very much picked up the colour of the purple underneath. And I don't think the gel pen goes on sufficient surfaces, whereas this will go on whatever surface you want. You just change your brush. If you want a thinner line, you change your brush. If you want a wider line, you change your brush. It really is a true white. I like it. I like it a lot. Anyway, enough playtime. Thank you very, very much for watching. I hope you found that useful. And yes, I would 100% recommend the Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White. I'd never heard of it until a couple of weeks ago, and I love it. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.